When a nursing home resident develops sepsis, family members are often told this was sudden, it was unavoidable. But in many cases, the warning signs were just ignored or missed until it was too late. I'm David Terry, a nursing home abuse and neglect lawyer here in Missouri, and I've seen so many tragic outcomes simply because nursing home facilities have failed to act on early signs of infection. In this video, I'll walk you through when the development of sepsis by a nursing home resident might cross the line into negligence. I also want to talk to you about what rights your family has and what to look for before the situation turns critical. So let's start with what brings many Missouri families to my office. A loved one has developed sepsis while in a nursing home. Now, sepsis is a life-threatening reaction to an infection. But what you need to know is that in many nursing home cases of sepsis, this didn't just come out of left field. In many cases, it can be traced back to a problem that was just overlooked, ignored, or just simply not caught in time. So picture this. Your father has a small cut on his foot that happened during a transfer from his bed to a chair. Days pass, and nobody follows up on that cut, even though you've told the staff that, hey, Dad's been complaining about his foot. That tiny sore then becomes an infection, gets infected, and suddenly, Dad's in the ICU fighting for his life. Look, if the facility employees were bathing the resident, then this wound should have been noticed and treated. And if the wound was timely treated, there's a much greater chance that sepsis never develops. Now, another situation I've seen is when there is a wound on the resident's coccyx. The coccyx, which is commonly known as a tailbone, it's located at the very base of the spine. Because of its position at the lower end of the backbone, the coccyx bears significant pressure when somebody is sitting or lying on their back for extended periods. And this makes it a common site for bedsores. The location of the coccyx presents a particular challenge for wound care. Due to its proximity to the rectal area, there's an increased risk of contamination from bowel movements, which can introduce bacteria into any open wounds. And this is why meticulous hygiene and frequent repositioning are so critical for preventing and managing bedsores in this area. Nursing homes should be doing everything they can reasonably do to prevent these bedsores from developing, but they should be doing equally as much to make sure that the coccyx pressure injuries are clean and free from infection, because that's when the wound gets infected, and it can easily blow up into sepsis, making it a life or death situation. So can a nursing home be held liable for sepsis? Now, the answer is often yes, they absolutely can. But liability isn't automatic. It's not a slam dunk. It depends on what the nursing home staff did or didn't do. And look, I'm not saying that every situation where sepsis happens is automatically negligent, because it's not. Sometimes people become septic through no one's fault. But the opposite is also true. Sometimes people become septic through the obvious fault of the nursing home caregivers, and that's what makes me upset. Let's look at what family members need to know, what they need to understand, and when a nursing home can be held responsible. So I tell people that before we can hold a nursing home liable, we need to be able to prove that there was negligent conduct that caused the bad result. That means we need to prove that the nursing home had a duty to provide specific care, that they failed in their duty to provide that care, and as a result, an injury happened. To determine what duty a nursing home has, we often look to their own policies and procedures, the care identified in the care plans that they prepare for that resident, and we also look to specific standards that are identified in the state or federal regulatory rules. So let me give you an example relevant for cases involving bedsores. Missouri has a regulatory rule that states, quote, residents who are physically or mentally incapable or both of changing their own positions shall have their positions changed at least every 2 hours and shall be provided supportive devices to maintain good body alignment, end quote. Now, before a nursing home can say that a bedsore was unavoidable, they have to prove that they did everything they could reasonably do to prevent the bedsore from developing. So what is the best way a nursing home can prove that they met this regulatory requirement to reposition the resident every 2 hours? The best way, in my opinion, is to provide documentation showing that they repositioned the resident every 2 hours in accordance with that regulatory requirement. Now look, I've been handling nursing home cases in Missouri for nearly 25 years, and you want to know how many times a nursing home has shown me proof positive that they repositioned a resident every 2 hours as required? Zero. None. Well, I've seen documentation of some repositioning, and I've seen some documentation of quite a bit of repositioning, but that's typically pretty sporadic. I've never had one show me every single time that they were supposed to. Now, let's break down a few key situations where a Missouri nursing home might be held responsible when a resident develops sepsis. First, let's talk about neglecting just basic hygiene and wound care. Sepsis often starts with something as small as a cut, a small bedsore, or a urinary tract infection, things like that. Nursing homes are required to inspect residents for wounds, to keep them clean, and to treat even minor injuries right away. If a wound is left untreated, or if staff members don't clean and dress even small bed sores regularly, infections can happen. And if those infections spiral into sepsis, that can lead to injury or death. And then the nursing home may be held responsible. We've seen way too many cases in Missouri like this where simple little failures by the nursing home end up leading to disaster for the resident. The second thing we want to look at is the nursing home's failure to watch for signs of infection. Staff members need to be trained to spot changes in a resident's health. Things like redness around the wound or a fever, a new onset of confusion, a rapid heart rate or swelling. These could all be signs of infection, and in elderly people, even a mild infection can turn into sepsis pretty quickly if it's not recognized and if it's not treated. One of the most basic things a nursing home is required to do is monitor residents and report changes to a doctor. If a staff member ignores a resident who's suddenly confused or just says, well, she's having a bad day, when in fact she's showing signs of unusual confusion or a fever, that's just not acceptable. Missing those early warning signs could certainly lead to a serious problem later on. So let me give you an example that I've heard happening several times, and I still don't understand why a nursing home would allow this to happen. So let's say that the nursing home knows that a resident has a bedsore on their backside, either around the coccyx or sacral area. And when bedsores get infected, sometimes they can smell really bad. It's like the smell of rotting flesh, because that's exactly what's happening. The flesh is dying and it's rotting away. I've had clients tell me that they smell that horrible smell as soon as they walk into the room, and yet the nursing home, they haven't done anything. No report to the physician about the smell, no 911 calls, no sending them to the hospital. It doesn't make any sense. But look, it's not uncommon for infected bed sores to end up septic, but they just seem to ignore that sometimes. Another situation I want to talk about is slow or inadequate medical response. Now, you've heard the phrase, the sooner the better. Well, that is certainly the case when it comes to preventing sepsis. The sooner a problem is recognized and treatment initiated, the more likely there will be a favorable outcome. When a change in condition is noticed, the nursing home staff needs to call a doctor, ask for antibiotics to be initiated, get a wound care consult, ask the doctor to come see the patient, and get the resident to a hospital if needed. Delays, even just a few hours, can be deadly for a resident. Now, if the nursing home waits too long to call the physician or call 911 or tries to handle it themselves, and that delay leads to sepsis, families may have a strong legal case if there's a bad outcome. Now, you might be thinking, this just sounds awful. How do I prove that a nursing home's to blame for my loved one's bad outcome when they develop sepsis? And that's a great question. So here's what the process typically looks like. The first thing we do is get the medical records. That's the first step, is to get every record from the nursing home and the hospital, and that includes color copies of all the photographs from both entities. Now, by the way, nursing homes rarely, if ever, take pictures of the bed sores that they cause because they don't want to implicate themselves. Hospitals, however, often do take pictures, so be sure and get color copies. Ask for color copies of those pictures. So like I was saying, when we get the medical records, one of the first places that I go to is the care plan. I want to see what the facility identified as the best plan of care for this resident. And then we look for the notes that show them performing the tasks the care plan says that they're supposed to do. Most of the time, the recorded care, does not meet the required care. And we also look for records about wound care, notifications to the doctor. We look for physician orders and anything that addresses any changes in the resident's condition. Second thing I look for is patterns of neglect. Now, I mentioned care plans. Care plans identify what a nursing home is supposed to do and often when they're supposed to do it. Now, remember that requirement to reposition the resident every 2 hours? For a resident at risk for developing bedsores or one who already has an existing bedsore, we look for documentation that the resident was, in fact, repositioned every 2 hours, just like the regulatory rule requires. And like I said before, we rarely find it. If the nursing home charting is spotty or sporadic or has major gaps in documentation, we will use this to try and show a pattern of neglect by the facility. Patterns of neglect are powerful evidence, and that's something that a jury can easily follow. Third thing we can do is talk to witnesses. Now, witnesses are important in every legal case. As a lawyer, we are not permitted to talk with current employees of the nursing home before a lawsuit is filed. If once a lawsuit is on file, we can talk to current employees in a deposition setting. However, in some situations, we are permitted to talk with former employees, both before and during a lawsuit. Former employees can be powerful witnesses for the plaintiffs. Fourth thing is we need to get medical experts involved. Medical experts are necessary in Missouri and probably every other state too. In cases involving medical malpractice or wrongful death in a nursing home, Missouri lawyers are required to have expert witnesses review the records and provide the lawyer with something called a letter of merit before we can file a legal case. Now, when the lawyer actually files the case, he or she has to file what's called an affidavit of merit, identifying the doctor and a brief description of why the physician supports the case or why that type of expert supports the case. If you think your loved one is showing signs of infection, please don't wait. Talk to the nursing home staff immediately. Insist on a visit to the hospital, or at least that they call 911 and have the paramedics make the call of whether the person needs to go to the hospital. And as I've stressed in other videos, document everything. Take photographs, take videos, make notes of conversations, keep a journal of what happened, when it happened, and the names of staff members involved. That is so helpful for your lawyer down the road if that becomes necessary. And look, if something goes wrong, reach out to a Missouri nursing home abuse and neglect attorney. Make sure it's somebody who knows what they're doing in these cases. Nursing home cases are not plug and play like many other types of personal injury cases. Be picky when it comes to the lawyer you choose. That can make a huge difference in your case. And remember, the sooner you act, the easier it is to gather evidence and hold that facility accountable. No one wants to believe that their loved one could suffer from something as serious as sepsis in a place that's actually supposed to care for them. But the sad truth is this can happen even in some of the Missouri's most reputable nursing homes. Even if your loved one is at a well-respected nursing home, you need to stay on top of the care that they received. And here's some recommendations on how to do that. Visit often and visit at unpredictable times. You don't want the nursing home staff to know your schedule. Check your loved one's skin for sores and wounds. Now, let me talk to the guys here for just a minute. I know you don't feel comfortable doing that for your mother. If possible, have your wife or your sister do that. If that's not available to you, consider getting a trusted female friend to check your loved one for that. I know it's uncomfortable for you guys, but you got to figure out some way to get it done. It really is that important. So next, ask to see their care plan and the wound documentation. Make sure that staff are following up on any complaints or changes in health. And don't be afraid to ask hard questions or to demand better care. Families who stay involved are less likely to have a loved one slip through the cracks and suffer sepsis or any other injury. Now you might wonder, why does this keep happening? Why can't the nursing homes just get their act together and prevent some of these things? The biggest reason, in my opinion, is staffing. Many nursing homes are short-staffed. Overworked nurses and overworked CNAs will sometimes skip repositioning a resident or ignore requests to go to the bathroom because they're running from one crisis to the next. That's not an excuse, but it is a reality. And it's a reality in too many Missouri facilities. But remember, though, that standard in Missouri is that nursing homes are supposed to be staffed to the point where they can meet the needs of the residents. And when those needs are consistently not being met, in my opinion, the facility is understaffed. And I think that's what causes some of these problems. But even a fully staffed nursing home can still fail if they don't train their team properly. It's not just enough to have bodies on the schedule. These people have to be competent in knowing what to look for and how to provide the care that's needed, and when to escalate a problem to a doctor. So here's the key takeaway for today. In my experience, most sepsis cases that I've seen involve preventable failures. If a resident develops sepsis because a facility didn't do what the nursing standards require, whether that's missing a bedsore altogether, ignoring the signs of a change in condition, not repositioning the at-risk resident as required, or failing to call a doctor, you need to know that when resident care goes bad and injuries are sustained, the legal system is available to you. And you don't have to accept the standard nursing home excuse that these things just happen or this is just part of the aging process. You can take action to protect your loved one's rights. So here's what we've covered today. We talked about how nursing homes here in Missouri can be held liable for sepsis if they neglect proper care, ignore early signs of infection, or fail to act quickly in a medical emergency. We discussed what to look for, how to gather evidence, and how Missouri law can be utilized to help families like yours. But look, sepsis is not the only injury that can happen because of nursing home negligence. Another common nursing home injury is the traumatic brain injury. I did another video called Traumatic Brain Injuries in Nursing Homes, When is it Negligence? And I discuss when is an injury just an accident and when is it negligence. If you have concerns about fall risk nursing home residents, I really recommend that you go look for that video. It's packed with critical information that you need to protect your loved one and to hold facilities to the highest standards. Now, if you go there, I'll see you over there.